Shabbat Shalom and welcome to everyone. Those of you who are new to the congregation or just joining us visiting, and to those of you who support us as members, we extend to you our appreciation. It's been an eventful week, lots of ups and downs. I want to extend my sympathies to you, Joan, on the loss of your brother. You should know no further sorrow. One of the ups was a wonderful evening on Thursday night with the Jewish National Fund and United Hatzalah of Canada, two really outstanding charities in Israel. And Lance Davis came from the Jewish National Fund, and Eli Be'er, who's the founder of United Hatzalah, were with us on Thursday night. Everybody who was in attendance got a lot from the program, but even if you couldn't attend, the reason why we had them is because we're supporting some projects as a congregation that are going to make a difference, especially given the current situation in Israel. We wanted to make a statement as a community. So for those of you who have not heard, there's a big campaign ongoing, and our goal is to have as wide participation as possible in whatever ways that you might be able to give, so that we can really make this a congregational campaign. So I hope that you'll read up more on it, that you'll check out our United Hatzalah scooter in the lobby, and that you'll consider participating and supporting. Thank you, Lou, and thank you, Howard, for your leadership on that campaign. I also, questions? Yes?
So, this week I was in Miami.
Yeah.
And there's an Israeli radio station in Miami.
Yeah.
As I'm driving in, there's a special report from the United Hatzalah.
Okay, very good.
So it's $975 per package. And they needed to raise $150 because it's so difficult for the army to get them what they need these days.
Okay.
So they're doing a real big push. So $975 US per package.
Okay, but don't give to them. Give to us, and we'll give to them. Okay?
So at that morning, from God, I won $1,000. I already gave it.
Hey, wow, very good. Not through us. You gave to them. Okay, you get some credit. You get some credit. I say double it and give us. And it's nice to have the crew Pats here. Welcome, Donna. Beautiful rendition of the Haftarah. This past Sunday was also a major highlight of the week. I think back to some of the extraordinary programs that we've hosted as a congregation since I started here. Last Sunday was one of them. We invited the head of the opposition, Pierre Paliev, to come and speak from the pulpit, and he really was outstanding. I want to explain to you this morning part of the reason for why I invited him. But first, in order to get there, a lesson from our Parsha. This week's Parsha concerns the status of the Metzora. The Metzora is translated in most translations as the leper, but we don't really know what kind of illness this tzara'at was. It was some sort of a skin affliction, and there's interesting debates as to what exactly it might be. But the Torah prescribes some very special laws for how you deal with a person who is diagnosed with tzara'at. And it's important that this leper has to be left alone, has to be isolated, leaving everything and everyone that they know once they're diagnosed with this disease. The Torah says, Kol yemei asher hanegabo yitma tama. Every day that he has this affliction, he is impure. In other words, it's not 7 days or 14 days or 30 days. It's as long as you've got this illness, you have to be out of the camp. This ailment, you have to be out of the camp, no matter how long it lasts. Badad yeshev. He must be alone. Michutz lamachaneh moshavo. His dwelling place will be outside of the camp. This is a double punishment, you could call. He has to not only be outside of the camp, and we're used to that because there are other examples in the Torah of people who are impure and have to be outside the camp, but even when they're outside the camp, they have to be alone. They can't be with other people who also have tzarat. You're away and you're alone. It's like solitary confinement. According to the Dad Zakenim, one of the commentators on the Parsha, the reason is because people were afraid that this illness was contagious. And a primitive medical understanding of those days, they felt that it was better that the leper be away even from other lepers, because the more are together, the more the illness will fester. Rashi has a really interesting explanation. You know that traditionally, the one who is afflicted with tzarat is guilty in the Talmud of being motzi shem ra, a kind of gossip, a malicious gossip. The Talmud understands this as a punishment for somebody who was gossiping, and therefore he must be alone. Why? Because gossip causes relationships to break. When you gossip about a married couple, you're going to create disharmony for that married couple. When you gossip about two friends, you're going to create a break in their friendship. Well, since you caused relationships to break because of your big mouth, you will be alone and have all your relationships broken. The punishment fits the crime. This is what Rashi says. It's clear to him that that period of exile is some sort of punishment, or maybe like a rehab program. When you're away, you'll think about what you did and hopefully grow from it and change. No matter how you justify the alone time, this must have been very, very difficult on the Metzorah. For all of us, if you think about times when you've been alone, there are times when we like to be alone. We need alone time. We need peace. We need quiet. We need to be away from the world. But after a few days of isolation, it becomes very hard to be cut off. We remember this during the quarantine periods of a few years ago. Most people don't want to be completely alone. There's a reason why solitary confinement is an intense form of punishment in prisons. We are social beings by nature. As people, we crave human interaction. I would go as far as to say we need relationships, not simply to be around other people. We need deep connections, people who know us, people who we know. Without those relationships, what meaning does life have? Over time, the Metzorah is healed because their physical ailment went away, or because they did real teshuvah and they've become deserving of re-entering the community. And next week's Parsha, we read about the leper coming back. And what's interesting is that the leper doesn't just walk back into the city. The Kohen, the most pure, the most elevated Jew that was living at that time was the Kohen, the priest. He had to go outside the camp, michutz lamachaneh, and get the leper and bring him back to the city. The most pure and holy family in the community welcomes back the leper. There's a story also in the Talmud, in Masechet Sanhedrin, where Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi sees Elijah the prophet and asks him when Mashiach will come. And Elijah responds, I don't know when he'll come, but I know where you'll find him. You will find him by the gates of the city, in other words, michutz lamachaneh, outside the camp, changing the bandages of the lepers. So in case I didn't convince you with the status of the Kohen, let me at least convince you that the Messiah, the Savior, is in the rabbinic imagination associated very closely with showing care and tenderness towards the exiled, the lonely, the one who is isolated, the lowest of the low, the leper who is outside the camp. And I would submit to you that it really had to be the Kohen to go out and greet the leper. And it has to be Mashiach that sits with the lepers outside the camp. Because only then are we able to learn, as regular folk, how important it is for us, what an important obligation we have to help those who are isolated from community. Reaching out to those who are alone cannot be seen as beneath us. If the Kohen can do it, if Mashiach can do it, so can we. It is a basic responsibility for every Jew and a particularly indispensable quality for those in leadership. That's the lesson from the Parsha. Now let me explain how it relates to last Sunday. In this country, we have a form of government called representative government. Certain people that we elect, and we elect them to represent us in, coming from the neighborhoods in which they live. The country's divided up into ridings. I know I'm not explaining anything that complicated to you. The country's divided up into ridings. Each riding elects a leader, whether it's to municipal, provincial, federal, school board governments. And what are they supposed to do? Our representatives are meant, yes, to help out and serve in the executive capacities that they're called to do, but I think most basically, they are called to represent us. That's why it is called representative government. In this respect, I was struck by the words shared by Caroline Mulrooney at her father's funeral that was held just a couple of weeks ago in Montreal. This is what she said, quote, "My decision to enter politics was a thoroughly discussed topic. My father was not immediately in favor of the idea because he knew well the hardships of being the man in the arena. I leaned on him for political advice. Now, Caroline, he cautioned me, because you are my daughter, people will ask you to do lots of things. Fundraisers here, events there, but do not forget the three most important things. You're riding, you're riding, you're riding. The people of York Simcoe elect you, put their faith in you, and it is to them that you are accountable." End quote. Well, here in this part of Toronto, this synagogue is in a riding called the Willowdale riding, in the way the federal government subdivides the province. And we have a member of parliament from the Liberal Party. His name is Ali Assassi. And over the years, I have to say, it has been a struggle to form a relationship with him. We are the largest synagogue in the Willowdale riding, and I think it's important that we have a good relationship with him and with all our representatives. On occasion, he has shown up. He gave me an award a few years ago, and he came to Beth Tikvah a few times, including this past Rosh Hashanah. You might remember that this past Rosh Hashanah, he was with us, and I acknowledged his presence in front of the congregation. But at times when we needed him, he was nowhere to be found. When the shooting happened at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, and so many leaders reached out to me and rabbis of other synagogues in support, 11 Jews, remember, were gunned down on a Sabbath morning for no other reason than the fact that they were Jews wanting to come to shul and pray. I was very disappointed that he did not feel compelled to say anything to me or to us. In the weeks that followed, I had a difficult conversation with him, but hoped that things would improve from there. Well, we needed his help a couple years later with some paperwork for Rabbi Zilberstein, and he also was not helpful. I had to have another difficult conversation with him. But the greatest disappointment, I think, has been his total lack of communication since October the 7th. In the weeks following that ominous day, when more Jews were murdered than any other day since the Shoah, our member of parliament did not seem to think that he should reach out to the synagogue or the rabbis in his riding. And since then, in the months following, as tensions have escalated and as anti-Semitic hate crimes have doubled in the city, that's according to the figures published by the City of Toronto Police, still not a peep. With every passing day, my frustrations grew more and more intense. Perhaps some of you might feel that it is petty of me to bring forward this personal spat from my bully pulpit. In my defense, I believe that when an MP is reaching out to me in my capacity as rabbi of this synagogue, he's really reaching out to you. And when he ignores me in my capacity as rabbi of this synagogue, he really is ignoring you. I have nothing personal against Mr. Assassi, but as a rabbi and for the dignity of my congregation, I am offended. On March the 10th, I wrote him a letter expressing my feelings. 2 weeks later, I did receive a response, not from him, but from one of his staffers. He asked for a meeting. But when Mr. Assassi voted for the NDP resolution, I decided the relationship needed a break. And I picked up the phone and I called the Conservative Association for Willowdale and I said, I don't care what it takes. I want Mr. Polyev to come and address our synagogue. That is the official story. In inviting you all to the program last Sunday, I asked you to put your politics aside. And it's not just because Mr. Polyev was pro-Israel, and not just because he's been very helpful to our community during these difficult times. It's also because of this backstory. Reaching out to communities in need, to communities in isolation, is not a left-wing or right-wing issue. It's fundamental to liberal democracy, and it is fundamental as a Jewish value. When the Prime Minister says he cares about Israel and the Jewish community, I take him at his word. And despite my criticisms, he ought to be applauded for the time he has spent with the Jewish community. But those efforts do not seem to be trickling down to his MPs. In this community, in our neighborhood, we've given 6 months for our MP to check in on us and see how we are doing. And from his silence, I can only infer that we are the lepers, the exiled, the inconsequential in his political reality. The laws of the Metzora teach us that when people, and by extension communities, are feeling alone and isolated and vulnerable, we have to seek them out, to give them comfort. It doesn't matter if they're isolated because of something they're able to control or something they're not able to control. And it doesn't matter if you're the greatest of people or the least of people. You go out of the camp, michutz lamachaneh, you pick up the phone, you send out an email. And the question we all have to ask ourselves is whether we want to elect representatives who live by that principle and believe in public service, or whether we want party loyalists, self-absorbed, who don't see anything beyond their own ambitions. In my opinion, that is not a partisan issue. It is a democratic issue. During the time when our community was afflicted, some people cared and some people did not. And in 2025, when we are casting our ballots, I hope we will remember. May we all find opportunities to reach out to those in our lives who might be on the outside, and may our current challenges lead us in time to find the consolation we need, the healing and the peace. Shabbat Shalom.